a week of whining and dining Republicans, it seems President Obama's two-year push for a grand bargain is back in play. And there also seems to be a growing willingness amongst important members on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue to find a deal. But the president wants more revenue and Republicans want entitlement reforms. So where's the common ground? Joining me now, Republican Representative from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. Representative Blackburn, thanks so much for being on the program.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
So the first thing I'd like to ask you, the economy grew by 236,000 jobs last quarter. Unemployment went down to 7.7%. President Obama deserves some credit for that one?
Well, I think that there is credit to go around. And also, look, I have to tell you, talking to so many business owners here in Tennessee, they were pleased to see that we stuck to the point of letting the sequester take place and beginning to cut across the board, make some cuts in this discretionary spending. What people want is certainty from Washington in economic policy. They want to see a growth agenda. They want to see tax reform. They felt like that last week was a big step in the right direction. They think that getting a budget passed is going to be another step. And for the first time, they feel hopeful that actually Congress will get a budget passed. The House has done it. The Senate hasn't taken it up. That's why we passed no budget, no pay last month.
Let's talk about that, because there does seem to be a real chance for some type of bargain, because we're going to go through the regular budget process. We're not up against a crazy deadline like we've been the last few years in terms of trying to strike one of these things. So I want to ask you, is we've seen sort of 2-to-1 spending cuts to revenue since 2011 when the Republicans took over the House. What number would be comfortable for you to entitlement cuts to revenue? Would you accept any type of new revenue with sizable entitlement cuts? Does it have to be 2-to-1 entitlement cuts to new revenue? What are you looking for in that respect?
Well, actually, instead of saying a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, I think what we are looking at in the House is how do you get a budget to the point that it balances in 10 years? And within that component, of course, you've got to look at the tax reforms and closing some of these loopholes. We know that's going to generate revenue. We also know that if you lower federal spending and if you insert some accountabilities and start to focus on outcomes, that history tells us you reduce that federal spending, you're going to increase the revenues. You reduce your tax rates, the marginal tax income rates, you're going to see federal revenues escalate. So I think that rather than pinning it down, Luke, and saying we have to have this to this, what we need to look at is how do we get a growth agenda? How do we get a budget that comes into balance, that is responsible, that is focused on putting us on that path to prosperity? The American people have grown so weary of seeing this uncertainty coming from Washington. It has stalled jobs growth. And you can't continue to grow the bureaucracy, take more from the American people, increase those tax rates, and they're getting nothing for it. It's programs they don't want.
Is it fair to say that you'd be open to some revenue then?
I think what you say is you are open to cleaning up the tax code. And because you do that, you know that historically looking at it, you're going to generate more revenue. You're going to see more. When you have jobs growth and more people working, see, our labor force participation rate is another place to look. It's been at 63.6%. It has moved down. You saw it's a little better. It's 63.5% with these numbers, but that labor force participation rate tells you a lot. When
Indeed. I'd like, if it's okay, I want to switch to just one other topic here, because it's something important to you. That's the Violence Against Women Act. You were a no vote on the last one. It's obviously signed into law. Are you comfortable with the legislation that was signed into law? It was bipartisan, had the support of some folks like Paul Ryan in the House.
Yeah, you know, and I have always been in support of the Violence Against Women Act and the programs it puts in place. I didn't like this final version that came from the Senate. I voted for the House version. And against the Senate version. It stripped the conscience protections for so many of our nonprofits and charities, and I'm a pro-life woman, Luke, and I didn't care for that. I didn't like the tribal language that was there. I didn't like, you know, Senator Leahy had said sometimes the law gets too broad to be effective, and I like that targeted. I'm focused on protecting our child advocacy centers and those abuse centers that have done such a tremendous job since.
Congressman Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Hope we get the Volunteers of Football program this fall. That's what you should be working on as well. Coming up.